noticed that sometimes the most faithful believers are also some of the most tired believers? Over time, as you grow in your faith, you do get involved in more ministries and more responsibilities come your way, and there's more opportunities. And then soon you know it, you're pouring out to this person, you're spending time with this person, you're getting so involved in this community and that community that sometimes it can almost leave you feeling like you just have nothing left to give. And it's not even just about things that you are doing at church or in your community. Sometimes it's also things in your own personal life. You're juggling the mom role, you're juggling the wife role, you are a part of this volunteering club, and you're in this ministry, and you're pouring out to this sister over here, and you're discipling over there. And this is all great stuff because as you mature in your faith, you want to be able to give yourself and pour yourself out into other people. That's what we ought to be doing, right? I think having a heart for Christ is also linked to having a heart to serve. And I mentioned this in my Healthy Christian Guide that you can find in the link below. But as much as these things are amazing and necessary, I do think a lot of times we can get into this habit of forgetting to take care of ourselves as well and our own spiritual well-being. And this is where the exhaustion starts to set in, but we don't really talk about it often. In fact, sometimes we just keep it at the back of our minds, or we'll just say it very casually in a conversation when someone asks, "Hey, how are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just tired." And in reality, what we're actually experiencing is being burnt out. However, as you mature in your faith, you start to realize that God never intended our faith to become a burden. And that, yes, serving Him is very important, but also finding rest is equally as important. Spiritual strength requires spiritual rest. In fact, I would go as far as saying it requires 3 different types of rest. Okay, so let's dive into what that looks like. First and foremost, it does look like spiritual rest. Resting at the feet of Jesus, resting in Him, because life is always going to be busy. There's always going to be things to do. And I do think that as a healthy believer, we want to disciple people, we want to pour our lives out into people. But a lot of times, a lot of believers are running on empty. And then you wonder why you're not as fruitful anymore, or you wonder why you just feel so burnt out all the time. It's because you haven't had time to drink from the living water. And so, what that looks like practically is really learning to find that intentional time with just you and God in His presence, where you're not distracted by the busyness and the loudness and the noise of the world and activity, but you're actually having a moment to just sit at His feet. When I think about that story where Jesus comes over and Martha is so busy serving, she's not doing anything wrong, but Mary is sitting at His feet and she's just listening to Him. Jesus didn't rebuke Martha for serving, but He also didn't rebuke Mary for sitting at His feet. So, what that tells me is the fact that there is a time to serve, but there's also a time to rest before the feet of Jesus. And I think as women, we have to also come to that place because, again, sometimes we're wearing so many different hats. And it's so important that we prioritize our time with God as well. Because how can you pour out into someone effectively if you're not being poured into yourself? One of the things I do like to pray specifically when it comes to this area is, God, empty me out of me, fill me with more of you so I can pour out into others. Because I want to make sure that I'm showing up to help people the best way that I possibly can. But if I am not taking care of what I need to take care of within me, then when I do so, I might be drawing from my own strength rather than depending on His. And eventually, I will be burnt out, I will be exhausted, and I will have nothing more to really give to others. And so if I really want to show up the best way, I need to make sure that I'm also plugged into Christ and rooted in His word. Of course, the second area of rest that I really want to emphasize on is sleep. Girl, take a nap. Go to sleep. Just go to sleep. There is always going to be some more work to do. I find that when I'm in the midst of doing things, sometimes I like to stay up a little bit longer because in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I could just get one more thing, let me just squeeze in this one last activity. I have learned I just need to drop everything and go to bed because tomorrow there's going to be more things to do anyways. there is always unfinished work. And so I think it's really good to prioritize your sleep as well, or taking a nap if you can at some point in the day, and just finding rest in terms of your physical body. The body is a temple of the Lord. And so you want to make sure that you're taking care of that body. And a huge part of taking care of that body is finding sleep. Not just like for 2 hours, but I'm talking about good quality sleep. Okay. And again, I get it. Seasons come and they change, and some seasons are way more hectic than others. But where you can, try and aim to prioritize your sleep. And the last area of rest that I really wanted to talk about is finding time to do something that is actually relaxing to you. Okay. Even if that's just like 15 minutes of your day, whether it's taking a walk, whether it's just lying down and decompressing and just putting on a candle perhaps and listening to an instrumental, or taking a nice hot bubble bath. Ooh, those are really nice. Getting a massage. Okay, I'm getting carried away. Whatever that looks like for you, calling up a friend, just finding time to do something that is not rooted in work or responsibility. I think that does really make an impact on how relaxed we do feel when we do just take time to do something that we actually enjoy. Life is always full of work, always full of responsibilities, always full of service. But sometimes we have to take a moment to actually enjoy ourselves a little bit too. Do it for 15 minutes in the day. And I do believe that this helps in finding a bit of rest as well. So those are 3 areas of rest that I think is important to emphasize on in order to just feel renewed. If you've been feeling spiritually tired or drained in this season of life, maybe this is an invitation to slow down and reflect without the feeling of guilt. Have you ever experienced a season where you felt spiritually dry or burnt out? And if so, how did you regain strength and renewal in those seasons? Leave a comment in the section below. And until next time, finish this race.